the topic that I chose to focus on was wealth and social class and the way it affects us as humans. Does it change the way that we behave? Does it affect the way that we treat others? And basically, does it overall affect us as a person? My reasoning for choosing this topic was I'm middle class, so I'm neither rich nor poor, so I really don't have insight on either lifestyles. One of the books I chose to read was Jane Eyre, and she lived in a time where there was social hierarchy. So, and also I've never, money was just never really given to me. Like, I've had to work for it, and a lot of these times money's just given to them. I did a lot of online research, and one of the most interesting things that I learned was the more money you have, a lot of negative things come with it. A lot of times you're less able to read emotions, you're less social, you're less likely to ask for help, and a lot of times the rich kind of feel like they're entitled to certain things. And I also learned that the lower class, because they're more dependent on others, they tend to be more in tune with others' emotions. The first book I read was Jane Eyre, and it's about an orphan who is being raised by her wealthy aunt, Mrs. Reed. And I kind of had the idea that Mrs. Reed, because of her social hierarchy, kind of treated her different than her other children because she almost felt like Jane wasn't up to par with them. The second book I read, this also goes with Jane Eyre, and later on in the book she marries Mr. Rochester, who kind of accepts her for who she is, even though she doesn't come into her money until later. So this kind of showed me that wealth doesn't necessarily always affect how you treat someone. The second book I read was Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And in this novel, Jay Gatsby is kind of perceived as being vulgar and gaudy and lacking in taste because of the way that he came about his wealth. It was through crime. But in the end, he actually turned out to be okay. So this can lead me to believe that maybe we perceive people incorrectly based on their wealth. In comparison, both Gatsby and Jane were wealthy, but they earned it in different ways. Because Jane came into her wealth later on, I feel like she grew up with a great personality. She was nice, she was happy, she was excited, she always treated people with respect. But because Gatsby grew up poor as well, but he acquired his money through crime, throughout the book he was kind of perceived as being conniving, and people didn't really like him, but he turned out actually to be an okay guy. I kind of realized that this topic is really, really broad, and it's up for interpretation, because I feel like every individual differs with the way that they acquire their wealth and things like that. So the nicest person could have all the money in the world, or someone could be dirt poor and they could have a really nasty personality. I feel like as much research as you do, you don't really know. The only thing that's really proven is that money, it's not the money that leads to the unhappiness, it's the striving for the wealth and the materialistic things that ultimately lead to the dissatisfaction. So in conclusion, I basically came up with you should strive for greatness, but you can't really let it overtake your life, because that kind of ultimately led to Gatsby's demise. So basically just be happy with what you have.